My Bonamici chain adjusters are due in today, and I did want to videotape the process for you in case anybody wants to know how to remove your rear wheel, the axle, whatever you might be doing back here. So I figured I would take you along for this pretty quick journey. I mean, it shouldn't take more than 20-30 minutes, honestly, to pull the axle and just install the adjusters. One little trick I'm going to show you is that with this particular rear stand, which should be about the same height as most, I have these rubber 10-pound weights. They're rubber coated. They happen to fit perfectly under the rear tire, and basically that's just going to help so that when I pull the rear axle, I don't have to fuss with the tire too much. It should lower onto there and stay pretty close to where it needs to be to get the axle back in. On this side, we're going to pull the cotter pin. I did order some hitch pins, which I usually like to use on the axle nut instead of these. You just don't have to bend them, you know, they just pop in and they hold up just as well. We're gonna pull the cotter pin, pull off the axle nut, pull all the factory hardware, pull out the factory adjusters because those will be replaced with a bolt that comes with the Bonamici adjusters. We probably won't be reusing the washer. Probably just the nut. Usually that washer pulls the axle nut out too far to line up with the holes, but we'll see what we end up with. So now, once you get to this point and your adjusters are loose, the nuts off, axle's pretty much ready to go, just be careful. It's a lot easier if your brake caliper bracket stays where it's supposed to be. Obviously, this is not a captive bracket, so it will slide right off of there. And if we can keep the wheel as close to where it is right now, it's just gonna make life easier when everything goes together. If you have a buddy around who can hold up the tire while you pull the axle out, that'll also make your life easier. But we'll be right back as soon as I slide this axle out. Alright, so just pulled the axle out, and next thing I'm going to do is pull the adjusters out and really clean up all inside here and get everything ready for the Bonamici adjusters as soon as they get here. But as you can see, the tire is resting right on those weights and it's pretty close to where it needs to go. So just to show you guys what I'm kind of doing here, WD-40, Scotch Brite pad, old cloth. Gonna clean up the threads, get all those perfectly clean, all the grit out of there, clean up the axle, and then this will need to be re-greased with a waterproof grease. I use wheel bearing grease, or I did order some Maxima waterproof grease too, so if the Maxima stuff doesn't get here in time, I got wheel bearing grease that I'll use on that. So I'm gonna clean this guy up and get it nice and shiny. I'll show you the axle threads. They're very clean now. Of course, I'll wipe them down one more time before I go to put it in. But now we also have to do the same thing to the nut. You'll see there's quite a bit of old anti-seize in there. Put new anti-seize on right before we put it back together. And just to go over this real quick, so you're gonna need a 12mm open-ended wrench for your adjusters, which will be completely removed for what we're doing, which is installing Bonamici chain adjusters. So these will come completely out. You're going to need a 32mm socket to get your axle nut off, and a needle nose plier to get your cotter pin off. This one's been off quite a few times, obviously, you can tell. Could still reuse it, and I may have to if my hitch pin doesn't make it here in time, but we can always pull that out and replace it after pretty easily. So it's pretty much the only tools you'll need for this job. Can of WD-40 will help you, and definitely some wheel bearing grease or any kind of waterproof grease, lithium grease, whatever you prefer to recoat the axle. Guys, HHR Performance coming through again with 1-day delivery. Now, unfortunately, I wanted to get the green Bonamici adjusters, but they were on back order. So HHR contacted me right away, right after I put the order in, and said, hey, we got black ones in stock if you want them now. I said, you know what? I was really torn between green and black, and that kind of just made up my mind for me. So it is what it is. 1 day later, they're here. These will be good because I'm getting a new toolbox soon, so I'm gonna need to decorate it. I almost got these tank pads too, but I went with the tech spec instead, just because they're tried and proven. There they are, a Bonamici for ZX10R, 16 to current. It says 19, but obviously till current, so. Awesome quality. They feel good, much lighter than I expected, which is awesome, because I was worried about how much weight they were going to add, but after feeling them, I don't think there's going to be a huge difference since we're going to be losing some of the factory hardware anyway. These things are made very, very well. Very nice. Let's get them on the bike and see how easy it is to adjust the chain now. So the Bonamicis do come with their own washer, which is much thinner than the factory one. So that's what we're going to replace this guy with. And it looks like these guys have thread lock on them already. I did have thread lock ready just in case, but these are already got Loctite on them. I don't like putting any bolts in any holes without something. They either get grease or they get Loctite, one or the other. Found my 1/4 inch wrench. I had one of these that ratcheted, which is the perfect way to do this, but I don't know where that one is, so this will have to do the trick for now. Good. And good. Captive wheel spacers and captive brake caliper brackets are a nice luxury to have. Don't need a ton. I did completely wipe this one dry, so I'm gonna put a little bit extra. My Maxima grease didn't show up yet, so just gonna use the good old Napa wheel bearing grease, which actually works really well. That's way more than I needed, but cool. Okay. In her hole. Just show you guys real quick on this side. The axle is sitting flush inside there. Obviously don't reuse the factory block on that side. So we got the new thinner washer that Bonamici provided, which is much smaller than the factory one. If you put this on there, I mean, look how much it overhangs and everything too. It's just not gonna work. So we'll use this one. Alright. And for the most part, that's it. They're installed. Gonna have to torque this guy down to 90. It's 94 or 95 foot-pounds. I have the manual, so I will pull it up before I torque it. But you do want to torque this. And you also want to make sure it's loose whenever you're making any adjustments here. Obviously, you know, don't forget that it's on there torqued and you start adjusting these, because you'll strip them out for sure. So now I'm gonna set the chain slack and tighten everything up. Just real quick too, when you're done, you should end up with 5 pieces. The original adjuster bolts, and the nuts, your axle block, and your axle block for the other side, and then the big washer. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what you should end up with when you're done. And that's how easy it is to adjust the chain at this point. And that's too tight. Oh, and that's too loose. That's about 1 inch of play. Going by this one right here. Almost exactly 1 inch. And we tighten these little set screws and we're done. I think they look pretty good and will make adjusting the chain much easier. Just don't forget to put your cotter pin back in. There you go, good boy. Wipe your mouth off. Not on the carpet, on here. Water? Good boy.